Okay, it's time to go to class again, and if you're a student, you may have been considering getting a tablet at one point or another. Whether you want to use this as a way to keep all your handwritten notes in one place, write on lecture slides, or simply have a thin device that you can do all your assignments on. Also, this isn't to say that a tablet is a necessity, as purchasing one really isn't going to give you some inherent boost to your performance. It might just make your experience a little bit better. Because don't forget, the tried and true method of pen and paper still works really well. With that being said, let's talk about some of the things that an iPad can help you with. The first of which I use most of the time as a student, and that's to write on lecture slides. Because in my courses, which were science-based, a lot of the times annotating diagrams or images was really important. In a class like anatomy, labeling structures and being able to cover things up and then write on them is really important. And writing directly on an image sure beats having your own freehand drawing of some anatomical structure. Not to mention that throughout the semester, handwritten notes on paper can start to pile up, and when it comes time to the final, you may find yourself with a ton of stacks of paper and you might not be able to find your notes. The next thing, which I go back and forth on, is being able to replace all of those hefty books with a tablet that most of the time weighs under 2 pounds. Because once you have more than 2 textbooks in your bag, things can start to get really heavy really fast. The reason why I still like to read paper books is because eye strain is definitely a real thing, and after using screens for a majority of the day, I feel like sometimes I just want to read on paper and give my eyes a break. Some institutions will only have their products available on paper, so they might not have a digital version that you can purchase. The next of which is a huge one, and that's taking handwritten notes on a digital device. This is something that most tablets can do really well, and can be really advantageous when it comes time to the final and you need to search through all of your notes, as a lot of notes apps will try to search your handwriting, but you can also use text in most apps in order to label them, so that finding a certain chapter or certain subjects can be really easy and quick. There are some notes or productivity apps that really aim to take this to the next level, and you can get pretty creative with a lot of notes apps, as there is a bunch that let you change the kind of paper you're writing on, all different kinds of stylus options, and integration for pictures and things like that. And while doing all this, you can still hop on a Zoom call or whichever video conferencing software your institution uses. These other tasks complement being able to do most of the things that you could do on a computer on your iPad, whether that be turning in assignments or anything else you need to do for school. This should be supported by a battery life that lasts a really long time, and depending on your day, should get you through the day no problem. This isn't to say that using an iPad doesn't come with issues. The inherent use of an iPad means that you're going to be limited to iPad OS, which in some cases just really isn't going to cut it depending on what you need to do. If your school has some sort of proprietary software or anything like a lockdown browser which needs a Chrome extension, then you might not be able to do what your institution requires of you. These limitations are more on the operating system side, as most iPads can handle this no problem, but the development force isn't really in favor of mobile apps at this point. For example, I had a physics course that needed us to use this prediction software, and it didn't run on mobile and needed Windows. There might be a lot of cases like this where your iPad needs to be backseated and be a secondary device. But this isn't to say that all quizzes and things can't be done on an iPad. Depending on your institution, it's mainly going to be those exams that require a lockdown browser. If this isn't the case and you simply need to do assignments and quizzes that aren't proctored, you shouldn't really have an issue with this. But this lack of desktop apps isn't only present in those scenarios, as using the Zoom app for example, you can see that you're using the mobile version, as some features feel a little bit clunky, and when you're switching between different views on the iPad, the Zoom app just goes black. And this is something that has to do with iPad OS, but if you need to make sure that you're looking at the screen at all times and you don't need to wait for this refresher, you can see that this might be really annoying. Oh, and then web pages that aren't friendly on mobile probably won't be great on the iPad either, as it can request desktop sites, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to work too well. So you can test this out by using your phone in landscape, and if it seems to work pretty well, then you probably have a good chance of it working on the iPad also. But some sites, if you need to use frequently, can be really frustrating to use, and you might not be able to see all of the content or material that you need to see on a web page, and navigating can be really tricky and can start to be counterproductive. I think that this will improve in the future, as most institutions realize that people use tablets or mobile devices more and more when it comes to education. So I think that there will be better optimization, whether that be through apps or web-based applications, in order to make school more accessible accessible on these devices. But if this isn't quite true yet for your institution, then you may need to find yourself a Windows or macOS laptop in order to get things done. In these cases, you can use the iPad as a supplementary device, as it works pretty well in that case, and that's actually how I used it in my personal situation. But if you're looking for a tablet on the Windows side, something in the Surface line may be better suited for you, as having Windows operating system can alleviate all of the issues that I just talked about, and you'll still have that pen input so that you can keep all of your notes in one device. So you may not need an iPad for school, but that isn't to say that there aren't advantages to having one, and it comes with its disadvantages as well. But you need to make the call on whether it's going to help you be productive or not. You can save a lot of trees, and depending on how many books you're replacing, you could also save your back. I would say that if the caveats I mentioned seem like all things that are going to impact you, then this probably isn't going to be worth it as a laptop replacement, as these things are really going to hinder you and start to make you less productive. If you're using this to complement your existing laptop, then you'll find ways to integrate them, and they'll probably work pretty well together, although you will have to have two devices at this point. But if that's about all that you have in your bag, then it shouldn't be too heavy. But before you go and buy your iPad, you should know that there's different stylus options available, and depending on the model you get, they might not work. If you want to figure out which ones go with the iPad you're looking at, you should check out this video, as I go over a lot of the differences between the styluses and which models they work with.